Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Jennifer Hayden, comics maker and graphic novelist. Please enjoy Jennifer Hayden. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today, I'm here with Jennifer Hayden. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
I'm super excited to chat with you about the intersection of graphic novel and creativity and how creativity just shows up in your regular life. But before we get there, would you take a couple of moments and just let our listeners know a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Well, my name's Jennifer Hayden, and I've been doing comics since about 2005, and I've got a book out called Underwire, which collected some webcomics that I did in 2011, and then my bigger book was called The Story of My Tits, and it's out. It's a story about my life and my experience with breast cancer. Okay. And so it's sort of my whole life seen through owning breasts and then losing them. And that's out now in Italian, Spanish, and French, as well as English, and was nominated for the highest comics award in the land, which of course it didn't win, but that was enough, an Eisner Award. I could at least dream about it for a couple months. I'm New Jersey based, and I'm an empty nester now. And I'm enjoying the fertile part of my life, I would say. Yeah.
I love it. That's wonderful. I'm curious, what got you into comics and graphic novels?
Well, when I was little, I loved the Archies and I read comics like a maniac, but I didn't draw them. And then I lost track of all of that. And I was always interested in writing and drawing. But I always felt I had to choose one. Mm-hmm. So then I had breast cancer and I was recovering. I was 43 years old, and I have to always insert the joke, if you have to find out something from the New York Times about the arts, then it's over, But I found out about graphic novels from the New York Times. And I was buying some books to read while I was convalescing after my surgery, because I had a bilateral mastectomy. And I found out about these things called graphic novels, which suddenly combined writing and art in a way that was the most expressive thing I'd ever seen. And I thought, this is how I want to work. And this is how, particularly, I want to tell the story of my breast cancer so other women can share it and not feel alone. And, and I can just tell them what I learned along the way. And so I read them for a year, and then a year later, I started mine. And I never looked back. I've been telling stories this way ever since.
I love it. I love that it's kind of a later in life creative pursuit, creative expression and experience. I think oftentimes people don't talk about that. They talk about the things they did in childhood, but I love that you're bringing this to our conversation today. So thank you for that. And what a treat. So what does it mean to you to be creative?
I call myself an artist. So creativity is so much more really than art. There are lots of ways to be creative. And I don't downplay that at all. As I said, I've played the violin. Okay, so music is creative. My sister's an incredible cook. That's creative. My mother was a carpenter, and that's creative. Creativity. So also things that are art begin as creativity to me.
Mm.
So I can remember being told when I was a child, oh, you're so creative, and let's create something, let's make, and I used to get frustrated because it didn't contain enough of me. The stuff I was making out of cardboard and construction paper and glue, and it just wasn't really, it was fun, but it wasn't quite enough of me. So, so but what is really awful is spending your life unable to express yourself fully. And the discovery of graphic novels was completely, it was completely healing. I sort of lost my breasts and gained my voice. And I've said that actually someone else said that to me, and I thought, oh my God, that's absolutely true. It's how it felt. And I would never ask for my boobs back. I want to keep what I got out of that exchange.
Yeah.
And that's what creativity means to me. It's being able to express that constant bubbling spirit that's in you and share it with other people, which I do now from the privacy of my art studio, which means that I don't ever get to see anybody. So anyway, go figure.
But I love it. I love that visceral experience of creativity and putting it on paper and sharing it with other people in that way. I think it's a unique creative process.
It was very different from what I had done. The other thing is that once you find your medium, you stop criticizing yourself as much. I will say that now I criticize myself pretty hard. I'm working on a technically difficult book now for my publisher, and it's taken me forever, and I'm really getting down on myself about it. But in the case of the Story of My Tits, that book the whole thing was just a wild sleigh ride to the bottom. It was 350 pages, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. It took me 10 years, 8 to 10 years, but the the experience of being able at last to combine words and drawing, it unleashed my sense of what was coming next in the story. I always had a prompt that was either visual or verbal. And so it kept me always going and always centered and knowing what I was doing. And I went through a lot of years of writing and throwing my writing away. At the end of a day of writing, I had a full wastebasket. I didn't have anything else. And it was very self-destructive. And then I went into children's books, and I failed mightily at illustrating children's books because no dirty words and no nudity, basically. That's what I realized after the fact. I was like, what? This is so uptight. I can't. So it turns out children's audience was not for me. I love children, and I had children.
Yeah.
And that didn't take them long to learn swear words with me as their mother either, unfortunately. Oh, what are you going to do?
Creativity in language, right?
Right, that's right. I'm teaching them something. Just don't say it in front of grandma or at school.
There are boundaries for when and where.
That's right. These are the rules, kids.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, writing your first graphic novel and then the one you're working on now and coming up against maybe more self-criticism. How do you work through those moments of intense critic showing up?
I probably need a therapist at this point. I mean, I started during quarantine. I went AWOL and stopped working on the book I was working on, though I was signed for my publisher. But my publisher, Top Shelf, is just the best one out there for creative free reign in comics and in graphic novels. And I love their books because of it. Projects become ripe, and the artists really get to focus on what they want to say. And there's too much assembly line type of work going on for publishers that put more pressure on people, in my view. So it was during quarantine, I will say, that the critic really reared its head, and I was working hard. I was working really fast on a project, hoping to get it out of the way so that I could go back to the one I was supposed to be working on. And it turned into a 150-page book, and no, almost 200-page book. And I let it go. I let it keep going, feeling guilty the whole time. And then started like criticizing myself, like, you're an airhead. You take too long. You always do this. You don't follow the rules. You have to follow some of the rules, man. And all of this stuff. But I just wanted to get this story off my chest. And I thought that's more important than any of this. So I did not succeed in quieting my demons then, as many of us did not. And I came out of there and I handed that book around. It didn't go. It needs editing. I got back to the other one, which I'm now finishing. And as I got back to it, I think I'm afraid a few grooves had been worn in my brain that were saying mean things to me. And I'm trying to get back at them by saying, no, good things, good things, good things. But, I think I'm far enough away from my breast cancer experience, which was, I'm 62, I'm almost 20 years away from it. And wow. I think that while I think I was in kind of a hammock of good feeling afterwards, I was in my second life and my second childhood, really. And certainly my second adolescence. And I was just full of juice. And I gave myself every bit of love that I could to create. And now I think I'm experienced, I'm good at it, and I'm afraid of becoming a hack. And I'm working really hard to keep it fresh and exciting and different and new. And when you do something for long enough, that starts to be a challenge. When you're designing boats, how am I going to make this one different and exciting? Right. It's another boat.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate the transparency and vulnerability of that. It's still something you're navigating, and you don't have it all sorted out and figured out, and you're human, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I shouldn't, I believe that everybody should know that it's not all it's not all roses. Right. There's pain but there's absolute joy in it also. I mean, to reach a point where I can do whatever comes into my head and then make it better, is beyond exciting. So it remains my biggest challenge. And I love waking up in the morning and having a challenge. I love that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And just kind of the outlook on it, while it can, I imagine, be very challenging in the moment, to have that distance of like, and it's a challenge and I love challenge and can keep moving forward with it. So perspective.
Yeah, and that also comes, that's, another thing. I was middle-aged when I started, and now I'm entering later years, and boy, is that wonderful creatively. I mean, the amount of experience you have and the way you can look at things. I just wish that I could talk to my 20-year-old self and say, don't worry about it. When you have the stories and when you have that sense of life being finite and not lasting forever, then you will understand things that you don't understand now, and your work will just expand to hold it all. And that I do love about creating at this age.
Yeah, I just talked to someone who told me that they've decided that they're saving painting for their 80s. Like this creative expression, they're saving it until they are in their 80s. And I just thought, how beautiful is that, to have a creative plan along with your life plan?
Well, I saved music for my 40s and 50s, and I'm saving dance for my 80s. Because I'm starting to take care of my body, and one of the things I miss was dance, which I did when I was younger. And I keep telling my movement therapist, one of these days, man, I'm going to sign up for a dance class. You wait.
Do it. I'm all for that. That's amazing. I love it. You're talking about kind of early years and maybe your first adolescent experience. What's your earliest memory of being creative?
Oh dear. I was in my crib I don't really know how old I was, but I'm guessing 2 or 3.
Mhm.
And I vividly remember some babysitter or something had made a wall hanging that hung above my crib, and it was made of cloth. And I think I used to reach up and touch it, and I don't know how, but I got hold of a crayon and I drew all over the wall behind this wall hanging, and I didn't get in trouble, but probably it wasn't appreciated, because I think in those days people still did the wallpaper thing, which was so I drew on the walls. I don't remember a time when I wasn't drawing. I just don't remember a time. My mother took me to I grew up in Manhattan, on the Upper East Side, and I did go to nursery school when I was probably when I was 4, the year before kindergarten. Now they have 2-year programs, so they did when my kids were little. But when I was 3, she took me to an art workshopy thing, an art little preschool, because she just wanted me to get rid of me. I mean, she wanted me to have like glue and all the things that I needed to do my thing, that weren't in the apartment. I mean, there was plenty of good stuff at home, and she was in support of it. And I was number 3, so she needed me out of the house. But I remember going to art school before I remember going to school.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I'm so curious. It sounds like early life, there was a lot of art. And then was there a break and then you came back to it?
Yeah, in high school, I was drawing all the way through. I mean, I drew like everything for my school. If there was an invitation or a poster for a dance, they would give it to me. I have had deadlines since I was in 2nd grade. Not always meeting them, let me tell you. Still wasn't good at it then, not good at it now. But I when I went to college, I decided that I had to be smart, like my family members, who were all very bookish, and I was not. And so I decided that what was cut out for was being an art history professor. Laugh track. I was not at all. But I took an art history course. I was lucky enough to have that senior year. It wasn't very usual in 1979. And I aced it and loved it. And so I decided to go to college, to a place that did well in art history and I could graduate from and go on in it. So I went to Vassar College, and their studio arts program was so dismal that after taking drawing and painting 1 and drawing and painting 2, I left all of my gear in my locker and let them throw it away at the end of the semester. I didn't keep a single painting, a single tube of paint. And I said, well, that's it for me in fine art. I'm not becoming an artist. I don't like doing this. And I did not go to an art school where I might have heard about this thing people were doing called comix, because I didn't hear about it, even though I had read tons of great comics growing up, European ones that my brother showed me, which were way ahead of US comics. And so anyway, so I ditched art and decided, oh, well, you'll just have to become a writer. That's what you'll do. I realized art history was not for me when I was like, just writing horrible papers in art history. And just dismal. And so I thought, okay, I'll do fiction writing. That's what I'll do. And so while I was finishing up a pretty weak major in art history, I read every book I could get my hands on and minored in English without getting any credit for it. And then tried to become, a great writer, and didn't do so well at that. And so that was a real dry period when I was really on my own case, when I was trying to write and had given up art completely. And I regret that intensely, except that maybe I was such a jerk in my 20s that I would have ruined art if I had done art then. And it was good to ruin writing, because I could get writing back somehow after the fact, once it was within a graphic novel. Once I had some limits on it. So that's the frank answer there.
Okay. I appreciate the frank answer, and I love because I think oftentimes we do let aspects of our creative self go and come back to it later, but we may not talk about it. We may just kind of romanticize oh, I wish I could get back to it. But it sounds like you found this way to really come back to that creative self in a larger way than original.
Well, I know a lot of people who once they hit a certain age start returning to things, start picking things
Yeah.
back up. And it's very meaningful because it's suddenly, you just picked up the skills when you were young, but now it's a vessel and you want it to hold something.
Mm-hmm.
I recently took up French again,
Yeah.
took up trying to learn how to speak French. I studied it all
Mm-hmm.
through school. And it's really, really fun. And it's now I understand it as communication instead of homework. And now
Mm,
it means something. And
right.
I could say that for, you know, English too. I mean, I loved reading the books I read, but I wrote the papers because they were homework. But now I think about Hawthorne and Hemingway and writers that I adored, and I think and they're in me, I feel them
Yeah.
in me, and I
Mm,
hear them in my voice, and I treasure that, I feel a connection with them. So
mm.
there's definitely there's something about, well, anyway, I mean, I think your 40s and 50s are your second adolescence anyway. I think you have so much hormonal activity and so many ideas, and you're
Yeah.
so awake, and all of this stuff comes flooding back. And I just
Mm.
loved finding something I could do with comics, because that had been at my core when I was really little, and then I had lost it, and that also was a sad loss. So
Yeah.
this in many ways has been yeah, it's just been an absolutely wonderful ride for me and
I
discovery.
love it. And it sounds like revitalizing within yourself too.
Yeah, I mean, I was not happy with the work I did as when I was trying to write, even though I should have realized that just having a practice for a long time will do something for you. And
Yeah.
then I had all this fun doing children's book illustration, but it wasn't attached to a narrative enough, and it
Hmm.
didn't really satisfy me. So it was really pretty great to find the combination and to feel joined. And I'll tell you something else crazy that's very creative to me is, I've had troubles with scoliosis, pretty severe scoliosis over the years, and I wouldn't be drawing now if I didn't have great PT for it. And the
Mm.
person I work with is someone that I danced with when I was young. We were dance buddies, and she became a really gifted PT and massage and everything else practitioner with a and she'd been super creative, and she'd been a choreographer and all this. So her creativity had flowered in this way that was turned out to be incredibly healing for people, and to be
Mm.
exactly what I needed. We're on two different coasts, we Zoom weekly, and she is completely healing me and helping me do what I want to do. And I keep thinking, here's this amazing thing, like we both have creative stuff. And I was drawing when she knew me, and mine has turned into this,
Mhm.
and hers has turned into this. And we're now in touch using these things like weekly. So it's I mean, creativity is an incredible thing, and keeping it going, however it strikes you, I think is just so valuable.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I love all of the stories and experiences that you've had. Now, for people who may not think they're creative, or maybe they've set aside their creative expression or experience, how would you encourage them to rediscover or find creativity in their life?
It's very hard. I mean, when it's eluding you, chasing it down, it isn't successful. And so, but after I had really been very critical of myself and kind of ruined things for a long time, knowing what my story was, knowing who my audience was, and knowing what I wanted to say really opened everything up for me.
Mhm.
And I think that's something people lose track of. I recently was with had a friend visit, and she has picked up painting in retirement, and was talking about it, but talking about it in a way that was all about the paint and the light and the way she's doing X, Y, and Z. And I just thought, I said to her, you know, you're kind of missing the point, which is you get to do whatever you want to do with this thing. What do you want to do with this thing? Yeah. What is that? What are you looking at that makes you want to pick up this brush? And at the end of it, what do you hope for? What do you see in your head? And that's the freedom, which it makes it easier if you did this thing when you were a child, because when you were a child, you gave yourself that freedom immediately. And as an adult, you need to get a glass of wine or, you know, something. But the way that I ruined writing for myself in my 20s was by giving myself too many rules and not telling myself that whatever I chose to think about or write about was okay. And so that to me is the most important thing, not to think, now I'm going to learn scrimshaw and I'm going to learn how to I'm going to get, you know, the scrimshaw tools. And it's more like, you know, I happen to have some whalebone around and I've got these tools that I got, and now I'm going to play and see what happens. And forget the rules. You know, you can learn those on the fly later on. No rules. Yeah.
Nice. I like that. The no rules, play, and have that freedom. But also there's questions to ask yourself. Why do you want, what's drawing you to it? Why do you want to do it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just like a color or a story, a tale, you know. I'm getting drawn now to poetry, and I'm terrified because I wrote poetry when I was very young, but then I stopped. The voice, I couldn't hear it. It wasn't inside anymore. And now I'm thinking, is that what's in there? Is that in there? Is that coming up? Do I need to do that? And I'm kind of ruling now, you know. I'm kind of like, go to your studio and do your book. You promised you'd do this book. But part of me is like, what about Sunday? What about if I take a break and I write a poem? Like, that would be so crazy. Would I do that?
Letting the creativity spark and show up. You never know how it will inform coming back to the book.
I know. And I have one friend who gives herself lots of space to do that. And she's quite healthy creatively because of that. I admire her very much for that. Yeah.
I love it. Well, this has just been such a wonderful conversation. I have one last question. What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
That's interesting. In my body, because my body's abnormal, you know, so I'm uneven. And so it's easy for me to hurt when I'm working, because working means sitting. Although I have sitting and standing desks, I can, you know, I've set up my studio so I can move around. But mostly if it's really flowing, I'm not feeling my body and I'm not feeling uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm elsewhere. There's always a return to my body that's like, you know, crash landing on earth again after I'm creating. Yeah.
Nice. So that absence of challenge or pain or discomfort.
It's as if I'm in my head completely. And I don't think that's entirely healthy. I think it would be really neat if I could feel my body under me, supporting me and moving with me.
Yeah.
But generally, my whole day is just my head and eyes and my hand. And, you know, and we're just existing together in a completely free place. Yeah,
nice.
That's my favorite.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for sharing all of your stories and your creative experience. If people want to learn about your books, the things that you do, is there a place they could go to find them?
So I have a website, jenniferhayden.com, and I have an email attached to that website, so you can contact me there. And I'm on Instagram, Jen Hay Goddess. I can't remember what the caps are, because I also have that name on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter
Okay.
very much. I'm on Instagram some, and I'm on Facebook. I have an author page, Jennifer Hayden Author.
Great.
And, I'm out there. People can find me. I love to go to comics shows too, so you can find me live at some of those. I'll post when I'm going to them on my website.
Nice. Well, I'll put all that on show notes so people have easy access. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. And thank you so much for inviting me, but also taking care of people's creativity. That needs to be, watered and weeded and encouraged.
Thank you. It absolutely does.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.